Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Retro Tech Special on the Sony PVM 2030. As you can see here, we're already going to get started in here working on the calibrations on here. And the first thing we're going to do is get the monitor ready for the yoke adjustment. So I've already got my inputs put in, but I haven't made any adjustments yet. The monitor itself is plugged in because I need to see what it looks like, and then I'll make my adjustment and whatnot. But we're going to start over here on this board on this side, which also has our potentiometers. But basically there are 4 screws on this board. One up here at the top, and one in the middle, one in the bottom, and then there's another 4th screw over here right near this big fat capacitor in the middle and the back. If you remove those 4 screws, you've removed all the screws you need to. Now if you also notice down here, this board has some of these white plastic things, and those are actually like door hinges. So if you just kind of take your finger under the corner of this and lift it up just slightly, you lift it over the edge there, and you're going to be able to pull your thing out here. Now you will might have to get inside here and undo some of these cables. There's a lot of these cable connectors inside here. Keep all your cables from laying all over the place. They're not really that important, but they are good here, and this is what they look like. So it's always nice to just make sure that you're not putting too much stress on the cables. You might have to remove one and then go back in here and do that. But see, for this kind of adjustment, we don't need to have too much extra room, just enough to make sure that we can safely get our arm in here, and that should be good on that side. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side here with the other. It has the same 4 screws, the same hinge system, and that way we'll be able to get this thing open, and I'll be able to get my hands back there and really turn this yoke, and we'll just take a look and see how it looks afterwards. Okay, so now we've got our grid here pulled up, which is a great thing to help us test with geometry. So this is a 240p test grid, and it shows you a lot of things on here, but mostly it's geometry. And you can see, if you know how focused your thing is, your monitor, as well as your linearity a little bit. But the big part is going to be the grid. And just right away, like we're talking about the yoke here, you can see how we see red down here for a line. And that line slowly goes up and disappears up here in this right-hand corner. So that just means we need to kind of get behind there and turn the yoke a little bit clockwise. If you're staring at the monitor, we need to turn it just a little bit and get that line level. Now to make it a little bit easier on us, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little tool, which I told you needs a really tiny, and this is just an attachment, it's got a flathead screwdriver on there. And on the left-hand side of this monitor is the geometry board we've been looking at. And right in the middle of the board, if you go down about 1 inch from the middle, there's a potentiometer port, and it says V size, which is going to stand for our vertical screen size. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and my goal is to make the screen size just a slight less, just so I can get a better picture of seeing that line, and I want to make sure I try to get it even. And that's just going to help me do that. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, actually, so that way I can kind of tell where I'm at. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to power the CRT down, and then we're going to turn it around, and we're going to make this adjustment to the yoke. And again, I'm going to unplug it because I just don't want to have any risk of being really shocked. I'm going to turn it back on and let the power seep out of it a little bit. Now, a lot of these older monitors are built with an automatic discharging piece in it, and it's just a mechanical device that's actually going to slowly discharge the high electricity out of it. So again, the yoke is the center piece, and you can kind of see it's that white piece in the center that the white ring is on, and the copper wires go around. It's very fragile, and so what I'm going to try to do is get in there, and I'm going to put my arms around the sides here where we've opened these compartments up and given us some room. I'm going to stick my arms in here, and I need to go again clockwise. So I look back here, and I need to go this way So I need to turn this yoke just a slight bit to the left. So I'm going to stick my arms in here. Again, no worries. And just bracing my thumbs and touching just the white plastic that goes right up against the CRT back. I'm just going to turn that just slightly. You'll hear a little bit of that plastic turning, but just want to move it a little bit. And that's it. And then I'm going to go back, plug it back in. It'll automatically turn on. And let's see how our adjustment worked out. And that's just kind of the way we're going to work. And as you can see, I went too far. So I've got to go back the other way and do it again. But I'm going to do that a couple more times, get it straightened back out, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, and so success. We can see our entire red line across the top of the screen. That's a good start. That means we don't have to worry about the yoke anymore, and it should be pretty well set as long as this TV doesn't move any set a lot. We'll be good and set, and it will be good and straight from top to bottom. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to try to center the picture a little bit, and then we're going to do this again using our little tool for flathead, and I'm going to move this screen a little bit, and maybe we'll see if we can get both of these things on here at the same time. If not, what I'll do first is show you maybe just the board. So let's look at this board first and see here some of the important stuff here. It's going to be very hard to read anything on this board from my camera, but I'm going to try to show you kind of the pots and the important areas of the board to look at, and what you're going to basically be concerned with on changes. And we'll go through and kind of talk about what each one's done. Okay, so you're going to look and see a lot of stuff on the back of here, but potentiometers are pretty easy to spot. They have a white circle around them, and they're a hole straight in the back of this board, but they're randomly placed on here. And so let's just start at the top and talk about some of these. So the first one you'll see up here is in the right hand top side, and it says H size, and that just is going to adjust the horizontal size of your picture. So that's going to again make that bigger or smaller, and we can set that. Then right under that about 1.5 inches or 2 inches, you have pin phase. And pin phase is what is going to adjust the way the tilt of the actual picture is. So you'll see the screen when I move a pin phase, it'll start to look like the top portion is moving towards you, and if I adjust it the other way, it'll go back and the top portion will be smaller and the bottom portion of the picture will be moving closer towards you. So we want to get that right in the middle where it doesn't look wonky at all. And then there's pin amp, and pin amp is going to help us adjust those corners, and it's going to help us make a nice straight line on the side of that, or at least as straight as it can on this particular monitor. So those are two important things with helping us fix our corners, and our linearity is going to be pin phase and pin amp. Pin phase not so much, but pin amp for sure. Okay, and if we keep going down here, you'll notice that if you come to the left of that, you'll hit this other potentiometer, which is not marked with a white hole, and it actually is just a smaller metal potentiometer, tinier hole, and it has vertical center, V-cent. That is, again, just like the horizontal center, that's your vertical center. So if you need your picture to go up, you're going to move that until you start seeing the center go up and then the center go down. The idea is to get the center in the center, and then from there you can use the size buttons or the size potentiometers and either do a horizontal size increase or a vertical size increase. And that way you get your clean picture and you use as much of that portion of the screen as you can. And so going on down from vertical center, we have horizontal center, which is just like vertical center. Horizontal center is right to the left of that. It isn't a white dot, so you have horizontal size up here, horizontal center here. Vertical center here, and vertical size down here. Same thing, vertically. That's your size adjustment. And there's a couple of other potentiometers that are important. Two others, actually. One down here to the left-hand side, it says pick bow, And this is, again, if you notice that your picture is turned or leaning or slanted, looks like for some reason it's kind of like the top of it is straight, but for some reason the walls are crooked one way or the other. That's bowing that picture one way or the other, and we'll turn that to make sure our lines are nice and straight, but that's what that one does. And then there's a H3, F-R-E. This is horizontal frequency. This is, again, just about the same as horizontal center, but you have to realize that the horizontal frequency is actually a little bit more sensitive, and if on this particular monitor, if you start using the horizontal frequency instead of the horizontal center, you don't want to rely on it. You can't overload this monitor by putting too much voltage through that potentiometer by cranking it up too high one way or too down the other way. I'm not sure why, but that's just something I've noticed on this particular monitor. So we really don't want to adjust horizontal frequency that much unless we absolutely have to. Now, what I like to do when I start these is I kind of like to make my screen back on here. I love to start with the this map here, this grid. It's a very good for helping you get your geometry settings right. So I'm going to put my phone camera right here and look at this, and I'm going to do some adjustments, and hopefully you can see that on my screen. So the first thing I'm concerned with is trying to get this thing centered a little bit. And so to do that properly, I like to always make my sizes a little bit less than I would actually keep them after I'm done sizing the whole screen. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to shrink up my horizontal size so I can actually see the entire grid. And then I'm going to go towards the middle horizontal center. And the first thing I'm going to work on is straightening this up. And you see, if I turn it to the right, the screen actually goes to the left, but if I crank it to the left, the screen goes towards the right. And so we're going to move that right over there till it's about nice and centered. And then you can see our full grid here on the screen, but we don't want to leave it like this, because what we want to actually do is make it so that there's no black on this screen. We want it to look like, you know, we're going to try to get these red lines as straight as possible, and then we're going to work them to the outside edge and basically out of the picture. That way we won't have any black screen lines or anything when we're playing videos or games or anything. So again, now we can see both our lines here, and we've got our pin cushion here, and then what we're going to do from this point is I like to go and start making my adjustments to the sides and the corners now. And I mean, this is just going to take some playing by ear, and it's really going to involve me cranking a lot on just the pin amp, the picture bow, and maybe a little bit on the pin phase. So let's just go ahead and start doing that, and we'll kind of see what it does. I'm going to turn this picture bow potentiometer. Now, remember, even if you're turning these things, they're not going to hurt you, and if you turn it, you're not going to hurt it. Even if it doesn't look good, you just, oh, that doesn't look good, so you just turn it right back the other way. And it's not going to, you know, as long as you've got the right size screwdriver in there, you're not going to have to worry about it. So unfortunately, you have to kind of make your adjustments, and then you have to walk behind and straight in front of the monitor, or you won't really get a good accurate reading on what you're doing. So I'm going to sit here and turn these, but again, to get the corners straightened, it's going to take the picture bow and the picture amp and the pin phase, pin amp, pin phase, and picture bow. That's what we're going to work on, and that's what you should, just spin those potentiometers until you get your lines nice and straight. And just work it one at a time, and sometimes you have to go back and forth, and you have to do resettings. This is really where it starts to get into personal preferences and basically how much are you willing to live with, because you are going to make a little adjustment over here, and it's going to make this corner look worse, and vice versa, because again, we're talking about an analog video signal that's not meant to even be perfect when it's in its best shape. I'll start working on this, and we'll be right back and see how it looks and go for the next step. Alright, I wanted to add something quickly here about pin amp. The pin amp is usually what you're going to see. If you see a monitor and it's listed online, it's for sale, a lot of times you'll see a picture and it'll look like this. You'll see that the screen sides are in, and that's simply a pin amp adjustment. It's really simple. It looks terrible, But honestly, that's just where the pin amp has gone too far and the outsides have started to go in on itself, and it's rounded the outside corners. So as you put this thing in here, you can see that all you do is turn that pick amp and it just straightens those corners out. Now you can go the opposite way and make it look the opposite too much. But if you get it toned in there right in the middle, that really helps you straighten out that line. And that's just a note on when you see that a lot of times, that's all the adjustment you need to make to fix that in the corners. Okay, so now I've gotten my corners shaped up. Now they're not perfect again, but they look darn good, and as long as they're straight and they don't look wonky, you're not going to notice it most of the time. So you just want to make sure that the lines are good and straight, and that's what we've got here. Now I talked about H-stat adjustments. Now you can kind of see here, this one actually is quite focused and has some pretty good clarity, and all the lines look pretty much lined up, and I don't see much of a need for H-stat adjustment. And on this particular monitor, I don't want to change it because it's so hard to change it because I have to power it down and power it back on. But if you have a monitor and you notice that these things are starting to separate, and there is a little tiny separation up here, again, not very much, and it's just in this corner. So that probably means that there's a capacitor failing or something, or a resistor or anything could be going. I mean, it's a 30-year-old tube. But it's still working fine, and I'm not going to mess with it any further because, again, the screen still looks good. But that's kind of what you're going to do. You're going to look at that H-stat, and you're going to spin that thing, and it's going to make these lines come, separate into 3 different colors, or they'll come together to where they're the solid color they should be. And then, if you look here at the top of our board, in the back, there's the flyback unit. It's a big black unit, and it's got a dial on the top of it, and it's called a focus dial. And it's safe to spin, so we'll do that. Maybe you can kind of see what it'll do, but it just does what it says. You're just going to turn it, see how it makes it blurry. So if you see a blurry monitor, oftentimes that can be fixed by just, hey, if you see your picture and it looks blurry, you're like, what's wrong with it? Well, you just turn this focus, and it just clears it right up. And you can see that, and there's just a limit to where you can see where it's as good as it'll go, and going the other way just makes it start to come blurry again. So you do the H, basically that's what I do next is H-stat, and then the focus after that. And anytime you do adjustment, it could throw that focus out, and it's always good to just make sure you do a focus right before you close it up again. Just make sure that your picture is as sharp as possible. But that should be pretty much it for that. Now the last step for this portion of the geometry is going to be getting this horizontal and vertical sides back out, okay? And I've left a good, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch mostly on each side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn my H size and my V size so that these lines are completely out of the picture. And basically what that means is when I'm going and I'm running some media here, I'm going to get that overscan area. I'm going to take advantage of that, and rather than have a black bar around my picture screen, I'm going to have a full picture and no blackness around the outside of my picture. So again, the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go over and find my horizontal size potentiometer, stick in my tool, and I'm just going to spin that, and you can see it just jumps right out there. And again, I like to push it to where basically I can't see the red line at all, just because I know that that means that anything I'm playing most likely will be, the picture ends will be outside of this, and I won't have to worry about seeing something goofy on the outside of my picture. And I'm going to do the same thing with the vertical size, and then we'll run some tests. So we're just going to turn this, and you see it jumps up, and there you go. And now we've got our geometry kind of well set to the way we want. Okay? You can see that. Now it's hard to see through this camera, and it's a CRT, and there's glare, but you can kind of see where the dots are, that we've got that grid nice and lined up and straightened up. Now, once you've done that, it's always a good idea then to go and start running your tests here. You've got another grid that's a little bit bigger, and you can see again, it looks the same except we've got larger vertical squares. So that's a few more vertical squares, and that just means that we're gonna be able to see that grid get out of there. So let's go back to our test measures. Sorry, we'll go to our linearity. Linearity has a nice grid on it too, so you kind of put that over there. But that's circles. You can kind of see how round they are. And again, if these things are out of focus, you can go with picture bow or pick amp. And honestly, sometimes if you get one thing, like the grid lined up, this just happens to line up. So I'm not even making any more changes to this. It looks really nice. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to back out of this program, back to my main menu on my SNES, and we're going to run some regular games on it and kind of see how they look. I like to just see what happens after I've done that, and we'll just go and run something that's going to have a lot of lines in it so we can see. R-Type 3 has a lot of artifacts on the screen. So right away, I love to do this, see these intro screens, see if there's white, how it looks, and then black right after it. You can see how good that looks. And it's very sharp. Got a screen full. And it looks a lot better than when we got it earlier today. So let me try to get a little bit better spot on this and get a little bit glare out of the way, and we'll see if we can't get a better picture screen. All right, and you can see that, I mean, with this thing scrolling, I'm not noticing anything looking wonky as it's rolling across the screens. I will run some more games on it, but it looks to be very well set up. Now, there are some final notes on this that you need to know. You could come up and get your geometry right, and there might be something else, the color might be off. This whole board on the other side kind of controls the color. There are potentiometers on there you can mess with. It's a lot harder. There are some potentiometers on the very back of the screen that also control color, and hopefully you don't have to do anything too much. Now, on RGB, your color's not going to change. You can change your brightness, and you can change your picture over here, which is pretty much like a contrast button on this particular model. But you're not going to increase your sharpness or your color or your hue. That's all just going to be taken from RGB. So that's not going to matter. However, if you are running S-Video or composite, you can use all those settings and help sharpen your picture and increase your color or even change your colors. One more thing to note, that when you're calibrating a machine, it's only going to be calibrated to whatever you're using. So right now I have it set to a SNES. That means if I go and I change it to a different console, the calibration is not going to be the same. So even before I close this up, I'm going to probably test a couple other consoles, and I'm going to see how they look. I might need to expand that vertical size area, and I might need to expand the horizontal size area, just because I want to make sure that when I'm running this, all the consoles that are going to be played on it, there's not going to be any black side or black top that's not intended to be there. So I want to overexpand it, so maybe on some games I might lose just a scan line or two, a line or two outside, but I've got the full picture then for all my media, and even a DVD or VCR or Laserdisc player. But there is something else that's very important. You're only calibrating to a specific input. So that means that I've just calibrated this machine to the RGB input, but that calibration, at least vertically and horizontally, will not match the display on composite and S-Video. So what that means is, if you're using these for RGB, then just go ahead and fix it to the RGB calibration, and that's all you need to worry about. Just calibrate to that, and then deal with it when you use your other formats, and it probably would be okay. If you're using this mostly for videos, though, you want to make sure that you're calibrated for whatever you're using it the majority of the time for. Some people use these just for the ability to play movies and use computers that use S-Video or composite. And if you're doing that with this, there's no reason to calibrate it to RGB. You might as well calibrate it for the composite. This particular unit will be going to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and they will be using mostly for old videos and video formats. So I will be going back and calibrating this to the screen's settings best for composite and S-video. And then that will make the shift a little bit off on the or RGB input, but they aren't using that as much, so we need to make sure that it's set up specifically for them. After I get this taken care of and run a few more tests, I'm going to put the shell back on, we'll put the speakers back on, we'll run one final test when it's closed up, and that'll be the end of this lovely episode. Okay, there's one more quick thing you got to check here too. I forgot to mention, there's black screen sometimes, and you might not be able to see on the camera there, but there's a white plume line kind of coming up above here, and I need to make sure that I vertically expand it so that's out of the picture. I don't want that to show up, even though it will take a little bit of my screen out. We're just going to go ahead and vertically shoot that. Other than that, you can see our screen. She looks pretty good, and I think we're successfully done in calibrating this monitor. Please see my other videos if you want to see a demo with the sound system hooked up and running some composite. Thanks again for watching, and wait for the next one.